Welcome back to the realm of unpopular opinions, and I hoped successfully to do the reading tastes tag once before, but I'm going to do it again with a shawl and in front of the bookshelves because I super did not like how the other one looked. So I thought this would be kind of a cool intro video to put like on the channel homepage, you know, the one where it's like for new viewers, for returning viewers, for whatever, because I thought it would be kind of interesting to see like my review style, how I rate books and all these kinds of other things that I reference in a lot of random videos. I think it would be kind of useful to have all these things together, and we're actually in front of the bookshelf, which I can't be bothered to film in front of anymore, apparently, because it's just a bit of a hassle to remove everything that's in front of the bookshelf. So let's take advantage of the moment and just go through the tag. The first question is the most important one. How do I rate books? Now, I've referenced this once before, I think, in a specific reading vlog, and then several more times in review videos, but I will just make it quick and easy. I use Goodreads, and I rate books mostly full stars and half stars. I can sometimes give random ratings like 3.7, 4.6, but I usually note that down in the review itself. And my star rating absolutely functions based off my own personal view of the star ratings. It's not an objective rating system that I use because, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, 3 stars is the worst rating that I could give a book personally, even though it's not the worst book that I've ever read. Let's just go through. 5 stars is obviously, I am a bit more stingy with my 5 stars than I used to be, but 5 stars is excellent, immaculate, beautiful, wonderful, probably one of my favorite books, but there is a difference between a 4.5, 4.6. I mostly give like 4.5, 4.6, and 5 for some reason. I never really give like 4.7 or 4.9. I don't know why that is. That is absolutely subjective. So that is 5 stars. 4 stars. 4 stars, while still decent books, they are absolutely not my favorites. I know there's people who still consider 4 stars like their favorites. They're not my favorites. They're just books that I enjoyed, thought were decent, but generally I wouldn't really call them like the best books that I've ever read or something that like stuck out to me personally. To be honest, and that is like what I will explain, 4-star books, 3-star books, and especially the stuff in between are books that I remember the least. Because a decent book that wasn't great, I will forget. The same as a 3-star book, which we will get to in a second. So 4 stars, I mostly will use like lower 4 stars or higher 4 stars. So 3.5, 3.8 for some reason, 4 stars. 4.4, but generally those specific ratings, unless you see them like in a Goodreads review, I'm not necessarily going to like insist on hyper specific ratings unless it's something strange, something very, very specific. For example, when I want to give it 5 stars, but I don't think it deserves the 5 stars because I round up on Goodreads, I will give it 4.4 to like highlight that it's almost a 5-star. 3-star rating is the worst rating I could give a book, which is why you could see the least amount of books in my Goodreads that I've rated 3 stars. The least amount of books that I've rated is the 3-star books. I know it doesn't like that for people because their average is usually like 3, but that is not how I function, and that is why this question is extremely useful. It's extremely rare for a book to either not be like completely not for me, to anger me, to personally insult me, for me to hate it, or for it to be decent, or for me to love it. Like, it's really rare for a book to get nothing out of me, and that is the 3-star book. Like, if in the rare instance I feel absolutely nothing, like I feel ambivalent, neutral, so entirely uninterested in the book, that is when I will give it 3 stars. And that's the biggest insult that I can personally give, because in my opinion, if you've gotten 1 or 2 stars from me, you've managed to elicit some kind of response, even though it's a negative one, but at least it's not no response. That is like a controversial take, and I don't really care because the question is how I rate books, not how you should rate books. This is my system. So 3 stars are very rare for me. and a really bad rating overall, because that just means that it might as well not have been read. That is my rating for 3 stars. 2 stars and like 2.5, which is a lower 3, is when I objectively think a book is bad. Like when I think this was a bad book, this was poorly done, this was disrespectful, this was offensive, this was whatever. Like I think that this was badly done. And the last rating is 1 star. I rarely give like 1.5 when I want to be a little bit polite, but 1 stars are also extremely subjective for me, because I work in extremes when I rate books, and that is why we will cap off this long question with 1 stars. 3 star is just non-entity of a book. 2 and 4 are my objective ratings. Okay, this was decent, but I didn't love it. This was bad, but I didn't hate it. 5 stars and 1 stars are like reserved for the extremes, for my like emotional, rational extremes. 5 stars is like, I loved this book so much that like I want to glue it to the wall so I can look at the pages every day. 1 stars is, I despised this. Like, this personally hurt me. This personally offended me. Like, this was the worst thing I personally have ever laid my eyes on. Okay? Like, that's why you can sometimes see on my Goodreads that I've rated books 1 star that are objectively, there is no such thing with books, but there are objectively, by the majority, considered as better than the books that I've rated 2 stars. But the 1 star is like, it is the worst rating I can bestow upon you if you hurt me personally and I didn't appreciate it. In fact, I hated it. I will highlight that with a 1 star. So that actually, now that I've realized it, that kind of makes me actually more polite than I thought, because there are a lot of people who just give, 1 stars to bad books. I don't actually hand out 1 stars that often. Like, it's actually really rare, because like 3 stars is the worst rating and 2 stars is my like as low as a book could go without emotionally hurting me. So technically my 1 stars are also very rare. Like, I think I rated 1 book 1 star this year, and that was like a visceral hatred. So I can tell you what the worst book is that I've ever read, but I'm not going to repeat myself here. So that's a little convoluted, but that's how the system works. I don't care if it's rational. I don't care if it's not the one that other people use. I don't care if it doesn't even make sense that a 3-star book is the worst rating I could give. It is how it functions for me. How do you approach reviewing books? That is the next question. What's your review style? Are you analytical, emotional, casual, or structured? Now, I am definitely not structured, which is surprising since I'm structured in every other aspect of my life. And I'm very structured as a writer. Like, my last draft was very to a T structured. I don't review books that way. Like, sometimes I will like force myself to sit down and type it up, because I usually just write down a short review after I finish it on my phone. But sometimes I won't force myself to like type it up on a computer or my tablet if I'm really angry or I have a lot of things to say, like good or bad. So definitely not structured, more casual. But as far as analytical or emotional, that really depends. That really depends. And that, I think, sort of goes hand in hand with the last question with the star ratings. I'd say that like my 4 and 2 stars are analytical. My 1 and 5 stars are emotional. Let's go with that. What's the book that made you a reader? I think that's difficult for anyone who's like been reading all their life, but I have 2 answers for this. Like, when I was very, very little, like, I remember what the first book I ever read was, but I don't think that got me into reading. That was just the first one that I ever read. But obviously, like, like everyone who's my age, like Harry Potter, Twilight, what else was it those years? I never got into the martial instruments or the Hunger Games or Divergent. Shockingly, I was way more of a fan of the films for those. So yeah, Harry Potter and Twilight were read many times by me when I was younger. But then, and also like 39 Clues, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Those were the books that like I still collect, because I'm nostalgic. I've collected them since I was a child. Absolutely all of those when I was younger. But then, because of, well, very fun elementary school bullying, I didn't read for like a year or 2. I always exaggerate it in my head, and I keep thinking it's like a 3-year hiatus. I think it's closer to like a year and a half or 2, where my parents actually got worried that I wasn't reading. So when I started like buying books again, they were like so happy. But the books that got me back into reading, where I remember just sitting down, devouring the books and feeling like I was back to myself again, where I was like, I can't believe that like this worked, that I'm reading again, were Possess and 359 by Gretchen McNeil. I devoured those books and I was so happy that I was actually reading. That's the only thing I read in like that period. But the book that actually got me back into reading, and I haven't like stopped reading since, I haven't had a hiatus like since then, is Red Queen. Like, to my disappointment, it was Red Queen. Okay, I bought that book accidentally. I did not know what it was about. I bought it at a book fair. I think book 2 had just come out, so there was like a big part of the booth dedicated to it. But I read that in an evening. I would not stop reading that. I don't know if it was a school night or whatever, but I read that in one evening. And it most definitely got me back into reading. After that, I read Shadow and Bone and just kept snowballing from there. So as much as I do hate it, Red Queen absolutely solidly got me back into reading. It's the first thing that I read and haven't stopped since, after that like small break in my life. Do you have a genre niche? Are there certain genres you gravitate towards, or do you read widely or across genres? I used to absolutely be in a genre niche, which was fantasy. Like, I used to read YA fantasy. Now I don't read YA fantasy anymore. I read adult fantasy. But then after high school, I started reading classics voluntarily, which I know a lot of people didn't read classics in school. I actually read all the classics that we like had to read in school. And then I just picked up a bunch of classics that I wanted to read after school, and I've been having the best time. So I do have a few niches. I think before I got into manga and after I got off YA, there was like a bit of a period when I was just reading classics and just reading fantasy. But since then, manga is like a huge genre for me. Fantasy remains the main one, and classics, I would say it's still three. I know middle grade's considered a genre, but I disagree with that because obviously it's not. It's just an age demographic. So I think even with middle grade, like, we're sticking to like, fantasy middle grades, or yeah, How to Train Your Dragon. I should have mentioned that in the question about like childhood books. But yeah, middle grades are still fantasy. Graphic novels, I love graphic novels. I wasn't that big of a fan of graphic novels before. I most definitely am now. Like, I love graphic novels, but that kind of also goes hand in hand with manga. So I do have a bit of a genre niche. I absolutely do. I don't read literary fiction. I don't read romance. I don't read sci-fi. So yeah, I guess I do kind of have a niche, but it's several niches. I definitely don't just read fantasy anymore. Do you prefer character-driven or plot-driven stories? I know people love to ask this question, and I hate giving the answer because both needs to work. Both needs to work. There are very, very few instances that I can name, like, on one hand, of books that work just because of how much I love the characters. The only thing that like pops into my head literally is The Witcher. That's the one thing that I can think of when someone asks me, like, do you prefer a character or plot driven book? Everything else, like, it needs to be a combination. I need to care about the characters, and I need to care about what is actually happening and what they're striving towards. There needs to be a combination, or it's just not a good book, in my opinion. But there are very, very specific niches that work with just character driven. But yes, and I had this discussion before, but if I had to pick one, obviously I think character driven stories work without plot, but plot driven stories do not work without character, because I won't care at all if I don't care about the characters, but I will care somewhat if I just care about the characters. So if I had to pick, it would be character driven, but I do need both. Like, all of my favorite books of all time are both. What's a book you love so much that you don't care if others don't like it? What's that one book you love enough for everyone? I don't have any unpopular opinions. I think all the books that are my favorites are well liked for good reason. So I don't even think I really have an answer for this. I'm like frantically looking through the shelves because, like, I don't know what I would say to this. A book that I love enough for everyone, that I love even though people don't. I don't have controversial takes. I really don't have controversial takes as far as books are concerned. I have many for like TV series and films, but I doesn't mean like a book that I. Oh, no, that's the next question. I don't know. Like, genuinely, none of the books that are my favorites I've seen like visceral hate for. So I don't even know how to answer this question. I might come back to it if I understand what it means. Yeah, this is the major question, I think, for everyone. What's a book you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, you know your reading tastes don't align? Books or book or books where a difference of opinion is a strong indicator of reading preferences. I would go so far as to say not just reading preferences, but like personalities, you know, like values and beliefs, because that's going a bit far. But I firmly believe that you can, pun intended, read a lot about a person, about what they claim is like their favorite story, their favorite character, their favorite whatever. Because it can't be your favorite without it aligning with who you are, what you believe in, what you value, and what's important to you. So I have a few for this that are like genuinely, if you don't like this thing, which you're allowed to do, we have nothing in common and we're just not going to agree. One is Jane Eyre. It has to be said. One is Jane Eyre. Because I think that's like my favorite classic of all time, one of my favorite books of all time. It could be top 5. Like, one quote at the end of the book, Charlotte put into words what I think and believe about like soulmates. In that one quote was like my phone background for half a year. It's just one of those books. Another is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Like, if you don't like that, we fundamentally don't have the same views, beliefs, values. There's no need for us to talk because we have nothing to talk about. There's not actually that many that I feel this strongly about, but they're just foundational to me as a person. So I think it's a very clear indicator. It's not one of those things that's like, oh, you don't like it, that's okay, agree to disagree. It is not one of those. It's agree to never speak. That type of thing. I think that's kind of it, but yeah, that's not a novel that I'm thinking of, so I don't think that really counts. Everything else I'm kind of okay with. But Nausicaa and Jane Eyre are just very specific. Another one that veers a little bit into film territory is like the Star Wars novels, Revenge of the Sith. If you somehow didn't like that novelization, we have nothing to talk about. But I could also go into the manga because, frankly, if you don't like any of the manga that are my favorites, we definitely don't have the same personality or sense of humor. So I won't get too deeply into it, but Jane Eyre, absolutely. Nausicaa, absolutely. Let's go with those two. And V for Vendetta. Absolutely. If you hated that, we do not have the same values as people. What's in your trash pocket? What books, tropes, or themes you know are bad, but you love them anyway? I do not have that. It sounds like such a non-teen thing to say. Rolling my eyes while I say that. But I don't have that. I don't have that, in my opinion, because at least I don't have it. Maybe some people do, but I don't have guilty pleasures, because if they're pleasures, I don't feel guilty. You know, that kind of thing. Like, the things that I love without guilt. So I don't really have that. Like, what's a thing that you know is bad, but you love it anyway? I don't have that. At least not in books. I definitely have like some bad films from my childhood in my trash pocket, but as far as books go, I do not have that. I do not have a book that I think is like the worst book ever written, but I love it. I do not have that. Do you have any deal breakers in books? Something that, if present, immediately turns you off from the book? Yes, there's a few. Okay, and keeping in mind the genres that I love, is going to make sense immediately. I do not want to see modern slang or modern swear words. That immediately turns me off a book. I will not read it. What's the point of reading a fantasy if you're just going to use modern swear words? Be a little creative with it. And the big one is animal death, animal cruelty of any kind. Of any kind. That's just my personal thing, that if you do it, like, there are very few exceptions to this, very, very few exceptions to this, where it's well done. And because it's mostly not well done, I just steer clear of it, because it's just, we all have our triggers. We all have our triggers. That's a big no-no for me. I cannot stand it. I cannot handle it. It's just not something that I interact with. So, like, that's a big one. That and the modern slang are, like, the big ones. Like, a minor one, but still, I'm only mentioning it because it's rarely done well, and that is, you know where I'm going with it. Rape. Sexual assault. It is so rarely done well, and that it's actually necessary to a story. Like, as soon as it happens, most of the time, I immediately roll my eyes, and I'm like, you could have shown me that, like, your world is gritty without this, you know? I didn't need this. So those three are, like, the big, big no-nos. As someone would say, but that doesn't mean that, like, they're not done well. Yes. Actually, like, all of them, apart from the slang one, can be done well. Like, that doesn't mean that I've never read books with sexual assault and animal death. Obviously, I have. It's just that it's one of those things that if you make me read something like that, either at the beginning of the book or in the first half of the book or in the first book in general, if it's a series, I will sleep with one eye open, okay? I will be on the lookout if you're doing it for the grittiness or if there's a point to it, okay? Catherine Arden, if you know, you know, when I got to book 3, I had both eyes open, because I was like, if she doesn't handle this well, this will be the worst thing I've ever written. So that's that on that, but I'm very careful with that. Like, as soon as it happens, and depending on how it's done, I can sort of tell if the author and me are going to get along. But the one thing that I will say for both of the tropes, that even though you could have them in books done well, I never ever will, like, give it a pass if it's graphic. Like, never. Okay? Because apparently implication is dead. Like, I know what happens even if you imply it, or, like, use different verbiage and don't describe everything in detail. I will still know what has happened and that it's horrid. So if it's graphic, you've immediately lost me. What's your strong opinion you have about a book released within the last year? I don't read new releases, as you know very well, but the only strong opinion I have is that I hated Emily Wilde too. I cannot keep repeating myself. Heather Fawcett is one of my favorite authors of all time. I've read all of her books. I hated Emily Wilde too. I hated that book. Like, that reading log is just me losing my mind. I hated it. If I liked her any less, I think I would have DNF'd it, like, very, very quickly. Like, I hated that book. I don't read new releases, I think, aside from that one. What do you look for in writing? What makes a book stand out to you? Is it prose, style, themes, voice structure, or something else? What do I look for in writing? Okay, now I know everyone likes to say lyrical, but I'm very specific with that, because there's a difference between lyrical word vomit and lyrical, this person just loves to put into words their imagination. There's a very big difference between those two. So I would absolutely say themes, like, they're very important. If you're just throwing words out there with, like, no rhyme or reason, then it's not something I'm looking for. But if something is beautifully written, then I can usually tell. I will, like, use a few examples, and I feel like all of them are classics. But Lord of the Rings, obviously beautiful, wonderful, I love it. I'm actually one of those people who has no complaints about the prose of that book. I have 0 complaints. I wish the book had been longer, actually. Gormenghast surprised me, but I loved the writing style. And this I will use as both positive and negative example is Lemis, which I'm currently reading, because sometimes it also depends on the subject, because Victor is like, his tangents are long, and if I'm interested in them, I'm having the best time, but if I'm not interested in them, I'm having the worst time. So it also obviously depends on the subject. I have like a bit of a rule of thumb. Like, if you're describing architecture, cities, or clothing to me, I will not be paying attention and I will be skipping that paragraph. But if you're describing nature, a garden, a river, the trees, the forest, the mountains, anything like that, music, magic, I will be reading every single word. I think the only exception to the architecture one is Gormenghast, which again really surprised me. I found myself loving every single long paragraph of his, which was definitely a surprise. So maybe that gives you a bit of a feel for how I liked how I liked the proses in each of those books. How do you decide what to read next? I read what I want to read. I buy books that I want to read, and I actually read the books that I've bought. So I obviously have like a bit of a backlog because I have a lot of classics, and I don't read classics quickly or often, even though I do love them. But I buy books that I'm interested in. I read books on my e-reader before purchasing them if I'm not certain that I'm interested in them. I very rarely experiment. I do sometimes get recommendations online, but I don't search them out. They're mostly accidental. And I know I don't have TBRs. I don't have hype reads. I actually don't read anything that's hyped, if we're going to be very real, because I don't like participate or interact with book talk. I only do booktube. And yeah, I just read what I want to read. It's genuinely, that's kind of it. Like, if I don't feel a book, I set it aside. I don't mind DNFing. I don't DNF books I've bought, but that's mostly because I buy intentionally. So if I don't feel something, I just set it aside. I don't love doing that, but I will do it. Where do you get inspiration for your booktube content? What sparks video ideas? I mean, I've been watching booktube since, not necessarily like its infancy, but definitely since its toddlerhood. Like, I watched the OGs when all we had were the OGs. Okay, I got into it around the same time that I got into reading, which was right before high school, which was now a decade ago. And I watched all the OGs, and I watched it for years and years and years. And then in the last year of high school, when it was COVID, I started just doing it. I definitely get booktube video ideas from other people because, again, I watch a lot of it. It's almost exclusively the YouTube content that I watch and have done for, again, a decade. So it's easy to get ideas, but apart from tags, I don't really get ideas from other people. I just talk about what I'm reading. It's not really a structured kind of thing because we've established that I can't really do structured. Anytime I do like a TBR video or I have to read this, this, and this in a video, I immediately fail. Like, I've done one successful readathon in the 5 years that I've been doing videos, so I just talk about what I've read. If you could make any book go viral, what would it be? A book you think deserves more attention, and why? Again, I don't read not well-known books. I mean, I can read like underrated gems and stuff, but I don't want a book to go viral, honestly. I think that's the worst thing because, and full offense when I say this, a lot of the times the books that go viral just attract the worst kind of attention. The worst kind of attention. You get all the performative stuff, you get all the aesthetic posts with that book, and it's not a bad thing, by the way, for a lot of people to read the same book. It is a bad thing, though, when it becomes fake, when it feels fake. When instead of talking about the book, the trend and virality just becomes, look at this book, look at this book, have you heard of this book? Like, I feel like a lot of the times when a book becomes viral, the talking minimizes and like the aesthetics maximize, if that makes any sense. So I wouldn't necessarily want for any of the books that I love to go viral because I think that'd just be so annoying and insufferable, and I'd have to like mute it on social media, but I get what the question is asking. Like, what book do you think deserves more love and attention? And frankly, all of Heather Fawcett's books that aren't Emily Wilde, like all of them, okay? I would like advertise all her other books that aren't Emily Wilde, especially Grace of Wild Things and Ember and the Ice Dragon and School Between Winter and Fairyland. I would just, and Language of Ghosts, to be fair. Like, I would advertise all of her other books except Emily Wilde. I think she deserves the love and attention and care that Emily Wilde got for all her other books. Because I hated Emily Wilde, but that's just a me thing. I think all the other books genuinely deserve to be very well loved. Who are some booktubers with reading tastes similar to yours? Now, this is an interesting question, and I have like a bit of an unusual answer, I think. None of them. And there's a reason for this. I have never, like, since I don't, like, again, one of the OGs, they all read the same books, and I read the same books as them because I was a young adult. I was a teenager. I read all the books that they were reading, and I liked, like, 2 of them. But that's besides the point. I used to read all the books that everyone on BookTube was reading. But with time, and now that I have, like, my own my own taste and my own things that I'm reading, and I don't read new releases or follow the trends or hype or anything like that, I tend to watch people who I have nothing in common with. Because I've found that on the rare occasion that one of the booktubers that I watch picks up like a novel that I happened to have read or happened to love, I don't really like interacting with it, specifically because I watch people that I don't agree with. I know immediately that 90% chance they hate it or they just crap on it, which is their business. But I don't want to listen to that. You know, I don't seek out negative opinions about the things that I love, which is, I think, your responsibility to curate what you watch on the internet. It's not your responsibility to jump into someone's comments about them disliking something they have every right to dislike. So I like to, and also because I watch BookTube and YouTube in general to relax. I watch it either while I eat or while I'm tired, sometimes even while I'm reading. So I like to assure that it's a good time by watching people talk about things I have no interest in or that just aren't like my genres or my niches. So technically, I have no one to recommend to you who has the same taste as I do. I'm sure they exist, I just don't know them. Because it's not a relaxing time for me to just sit down and listen to someone trash talk Jane Eyre while I'm sitting in peace. So I don't know if it's relatable that I don't watch people who have the same taste as I do, but I just don't find it relaxing if I constantly have to listen about things I love and risk them being dragged through the mud, if that makes sense. It's not a sensitive issue that, like, I can't handle it. I love reading reviews, like 1-star reviews sometimes, and really vehemently disagree with them, but I just don't seek out negative content about things that I love, and I don't think anyone should, because that's counterintuitive and you're just going to get angry and upset and have a parasocial relationship with that novel. So I don't have anything to say to this. I watch a lot of booktubers and none of them have the same taste as me. In fact, so many of them have nothing in common with me. Like, I know if they're going to do a video praising books that I will never read those books because I'm likely going to hate them. That is it for the video. I yapped on, as I am wont to do. That is one of the things that also you need to know about me. I cannot shut up in videos. I can be quiet for an entire day, but if you get me to talk about something I'm interested in or love or even hate, you won't be able to get me shut up. So that's like a bit of an introduction to what I do here, how I speak about books, how I rate books, a bit of a reading history, I suppose, like my niches, my opinions. I think this is a useful tag because you definitely get someone's vibe. And unfortunately, if you are like me and you don't watch people you agree with, then I won't be seeing you again. But if you do like hearing from people who have the same opinions as you, then that's great and welcome. So it feels weird saying that after I've been doing this for 5 years, but since it's an audience of me and like 3 other people, I think it is absolutely fine to just be welcoming every time as if it's the first video that you've ever seen. So I'm also a writer in case you didn't catch that. I will go querying this year, but I'm already dreading that. So let's just not get into it and let's just leave it at that. I will see you in the next video.